Picture this, it's 1955, and millions of American women are swooning over Hollywood's newest heartthrob. Rock Hudson stands 6'5", with piercing blue eyes and the kind of rugged masculinity that made him the perfect leading man. But what if I told you that everything you thought you knew about Rock Hudson was a carefully crafted lie? The man born Roy Harold Scherer Jr. in 1925 carried a secret so dangerous that it could have destroyed not just his career, but his entire existence. In an era when being different wasn't just frowned upon, it was illegal in most states, Rock Hudson lived a double life that would make the most skilled spy envious. Our story begins in a small Hollywood office in 1948, where a nervous young man named Roy sat across from talent agent Henry Wilson. Wilson had a reputation for creating stars, but he also had a very specific type of client. "You're going to be Rock Hudson," Wilson declared, and with those words, Roy Scherer ceased to exist. But here's what the studio publicity machines never told you: Rock Hudson wasn't just playing a character on screen. He was playing one in real life, every single day. Imagine living in constant fear that one wrong move, one careless word, could end everything you'd worked for. The Hollywood studio system of the 1950s was ruthless. Stars were property, their images carefully controlled and manufactured. Universal Studios paired Rock with a series of beautiful leading ladies: Doris Day, Jane Wyman, Elizabeth Taylor. The chemistry seemed real on screen, but behind the cameras, Rock was fighting a battle that few people knew existed. In 1955, studio executives made a decision that would haunt Rock for the rest of his life. They forced him into a marriage with Phyllis Gates, his agent's secretary. The wedding was a Hollywood spectacle, photographed and celebrated in every major magazine. But those who knew Rock personally witnessed something heartbreaking at that ceremony: a man sacrificing his authentic self on the altar of public expectation. Now here's where the story gets really interesting, and I want you to think about this. What would you do if you had to pretend to be someone completely different every day of your life? How long could you maintain that facade? Phyllis later revealed in interviews that she suspected the truth from the beginning, but the pressures of the time made it impossible to address. She spoke of lonely evenings, of a husband who seemed distant and troubled, of a marriage that existed only for the cameras. The divorce came 3 years later, citing mental cruelty, but the real cruelty was what society was doing to both of them. Rock's closest friends from that era paint a picture of a man living in constant anxiety. Tom Clark, a makeup artist who worked with Rock for over 2 decades, described finding him in his dressing room after filming, hands shaking, staring at himself in the mirror. He would say, "Tom, I don't know who I am anymore," Clark recalled in a 1986 interview that was buried by the studios. The weight of deception began showing in Rock's performances. If you watch his films from the late 1950s carefully, you can see something different in his eyes, a sadness that the makeup couldn't cover. His co-star Elizabeth Taylor noticed it too. She later wrote in her memoirs that Rock seemed like a beautiful bird trapped in a golden cage. But Rock wasn't just hiding from the public, he was hiding from himself. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, who researched Hollywood's hidden histories, discovered appointment records showing that Rock regularly visited a psychiatrist under a false name. The sessions, according to fragments of notes found in estate sales, revealed a man desperately trying to reconcile his public persona with his private truth. The 1960s brought some relief. Rock found love with Mark Christian, a relationship that lasted for years but had to be conducted in complete secrecy. They lived together, but when reporters came calling, Mark had to hide in backrooms or claim to be just a friend visiting. Can you imagine the pain of having to deny the person you love most in the world? The strain was enormous. Rock's housekeeper, Maria Santos, who worked for him for 15 years, described finding him sitting alone in his garden at dawn, still in his tuxedo from premieres, tears streaming down his face. "Mr. Hudson was the loneliest man I ever knew," she said in a rare interview given years after his death. Here's the part that will break your heart: Rock Hudson never got to experience what most of us take for granted, the simple freedom to be yourself. Even at the height of his fame, earning millions, and beloved by fans worldwide, he couldn't hold hands with the person he loved in public, couldn't introduce his partner as anything more than a friend. The final chapter of Rock's story began in 1984 when he started showing signs of illness. The disease that would eventually claim his life was still largely misunderstood and heavily stigmatized. For months, he tried to hide his condition, using makeup to cover the physical changes, avoiding public appearances. The man who had spent his entire career hiding who he truly was now had to hide once more, this time his mortality. But in those final months, something remarkable happened. Rock began reaching out to old friends, having conversations he'd never dared to have before. He told them about the love he'd found, the happiness he'd experienced in private moments, and the regret he felt about living so much of his life in fear. When Rock Hudson died on October 2, 1985, he left behind more than just a collection of classic films. He left behind a legacy that would eventually help change how society views authenticity and acceptance. His death sparked conversations that had been whispered about for decades. The letters found in his personal effects after his death revealed a man of incredible depth, intelligence, and sensitivity. Love letters, poetry, and journal entries showed the real Rock Hudson, the person the world never got to meet. One entry, dated just months before his death, simply read, "I wish I could have been brave enough to be myself sooner." Rock Hudson's story isn't just about Hollywood glamour or hidden secrets. It's about the price of living inauthentically, about a society that forced people to choose between love and acceptance, between truth and success. I leave you with the song Rock loved to listen to in his private moments, "The Way You Look Tonight" by Frank Sinatra. See you in the next video.